I wish I had my first.
Next up is Bonnie Turnbul, who is a school board member at South Lake Tahoe Unified.
I just wanted to say that I ran for the board 4 years ago because I'd had enough. I decided it was time to stop complaining and do something, and I invite all of you to think about that's for you next time. First, I'd like to also say that a letter went out from our new superintendent. As of last year, the board hired a brand new superintendent, so it feels like we are on an entirely new era. Though we have been working on equity in some form for years now, I think that this is going to be a real change of direction at this point. So the letter that our new superintendent, Dr. Todd Cutler, wrote to the community reads as follows. Parents, families, and friends. I know that we're all deeply affected by the recent public social injustices. The reaction of so many in this country has created a movement and dialogue that we as educators have an obligation to acknowledge and act upon. Our district stands united in its commitment to combat racism, bigotry, bias, and discrimination in all forms. Our district and staff are committed to supporting the diversity of all students. We believe in educating our students to be civilly and socially minded. We strive to create a caring culture and environment that cares about the well-being of everyone, no matter their race, color, gender, or sexual orientation. Additionally, we understand our role as an education institution to develop curriculum and social programs to help foster an understanding of the histories and traditions of multiple cultures as a way to address racism and other forms of oppression. Though this statement may be considered late with regards to the recent social unrest in our country, let it be known that we do not accept social injustice and believe in equity for all. Thanks, Todd. So yesterday, when I went to bed, I thought, I'm going to just stop there, that says it all. But this gathering really inspired in me a drive to understand what it is that we're working on as a district. Not that it's been an easy process or going well or whatever, but what are we trying to do? Because it's very easy to say we don't stand for any of these things, but it's really challenging to figure out how to stop them. This is from my own heart. Equal opportunity is foundational to our dream for our children. It is the dream of public education. Few goals in education have been as frustrating and urgent as the effort to fix the deep and generational disparity in achievement between the haves and have-not in California schools. Our local school is no exception. Despite examples of our students achieving at the highest levels, we have a deep and persistent achievement gap. Only about half of our students meet state standards on the state test of reading and language arts. Only about a third of our students meet the standards on the state test of mathematics. This has remained consistent for about a decade, since I've been paying attention. Now, achievement scores are not a complete measure of student success. However, a failure to meet these standards often means that a student will face many more barriers to opportunities in pursuing careers and educational opportunities in the future. It must be understood that studies show that student achievement gaps are mainly driven by school poverty, not a school's racial composition. I'm glad we're having this conversation today because this problem can't be solved by schools alone, though schools must be part of the solution. So this got me thinking. We were wishing for equity. What exactly are we trying to do? What are the strategies that we've been working on? And I thought this was important to share because parents in our community and community members can support their own students and community decisions better if there is a better understanding of the thinking behind certain strategy changes. So I also want to say that I'm on a subcommittee for the Board of Education right now that is developing a 3-day retreat retreat specifically for board members to explore the idea of equity and what it should mean for our district. But anyway, looking back, some things that would be good to know. So California under Brown changed the funding formula for schools. Previously, it was largely based upon local property tax values. But this new formula passed by the legislature is called the Local Control and Funding Formula. So California initiated this sweeping reform in funding in an attempt to channel more resources to high-needs students and to better level the educational playing field. So unlike past funding formulas, this one now directs more funds to disadvantaged students. Specifically, districts with higher concentrations of low-income students, English language learners, and foster youth receive additional funding through what are called supplemental and concentration grants. In all districts like ours, which receive substantial amount of these additional monies, it has lowered classroom sizes, added resources such as extra teachers and support staff because we have these high concentration of disadvantaged students. However, despite years of economic growth in California, school districts have had chronic and increasing financial problems. Though student enrollment, partially because student enrollment has declined in California and is declining in our own district, we are getting less money from the state, but we have certain fixed costs, such as the healthcare benefits of our staff, special education programs, employee pension benefits, and so on. So, for example, though Al Tahoe Elementary is no longer a functioning elementary school, the costs of upkeep on a 50-year-old deteriorating building don't go away. So, moreover, relative to the rest of the nation, California is underinvesting in our students. When our investments in public education are adjusted for cost of living, California is 41st in the nation in education spending. We spend on average about $10,000 per student in California. The national average is about $13,000, and there are states that spend literally twice as much as we do in the state of California, such as New York, that spend about $20,000 a year. The second topic that I'd just like to help people understand is what's called testing. Now, it makes everyone's skin crawl. But what really we're trying to achieve, we need to move away from this idea that testing is exclusively a judgment of success or character or anything else. What we're trying to do is understand where students are so that we can really target their improvement. This is kind of a change in mindset because under No Child Left Behind, it was punitive not to do really well on tests for districts and teachers and everyone else. We're moving beyond that. And so, there's this concern that if we allow, like under distance learning, that if we allow students to quote test at home, their parents will help them so they do well on the test. Whereas what really is going on is a teacher's trying to understand how to help that student. A third topic I'd just like to raise, that LTUSD has established many partnerships with an array of support agencies and community groups around town. We are working very hard to provide supports for the whole child, including mental health and wellness supports. It's extraordinary that this district has, for example, a nurse at every single site. Another program that the district has been very proud of is AVID. You've probably seen the acronym. It stands for Advancement Through Individual Achievement. I'm going to just tell you briefly what that program means. So the purpose of this program is to prepare students for college eligibility and success. So it targets students that are in the academic sort of middle, students that have not had a college-going background in their family. They're the first people in their family to go to school. That's the plan. They have a desire to go to college, the willingness to work hard. And what AVID does is it provides supports as they put students into more advanced classes than they might ordinarily have been entering. So this is a real direct attempt to level the playing field for minority, low-income, and other students. Another initiative that's underway right now is at the middle school. This is an example of how challenging it is to understand the policies that create inequities. So it's now understood that the traditional grading policies tend to undermine the success of the less advantaged students. That's kind of a curious thing. So I'm thinking of my own example. I went to the back to school night with my kid at the high school. My kid got credit for that. And she misses out on something, so she doesn't pass a test, and so she can add maybe another paper for extra credit, or she can do extra work. And these are things that are not necessarily equally available. A lot of grading has a lot to do with just showing up and turning in the papers. So what the middle school is experimenting with right now is what is called competency-based grading. So instead of being graded on every paper you're showing in, you're basically passed on to the next level once you achieve a certain level of competency, which is based on the state standards. I hear it's going really well at the middle school, and it would be my dream to extend that beyond. Let's see. Other traditional policies that undermine equity is, for example, tracking. That one it's one that needs to be examined closely because it has both benefits and real serious drawbacks for students. And two other factors that we've worked on. One is we have created an array of theme-based schools with open enrollment. So before we had a largely segregated school system, and it's no longer nearly as segregated as it was because students are attracted to different schools around, and so they're by interest. And so if you're interested in science, you end up over here, even if it's not your neighborhood. There again, it's got its trade-offs, but that is one of the benefits of that system. And lastly, it has been suggested directly to the board that we offer a more diverse cultural curriculum. So I'm very pleased to say we just passed approved a new course called Hispanic Cinema and Culture, and it really explores different Hispanic and Spanish cultures through cinema and other arts. And I just want to make one plug. This is something that we haven't started, but it's a particular passion of mine, is computer science. So as it is right now, only 3% of students in the state of California take a computer science class. There are significant disparities by race and ethnicity in people that take computer science. This is a huge barrier, and we feel it here. Computers are the new tool. They are methods, they are mechanisms for doing advanced complex thinking, creative applications of problem solving, critical thinking, and so on. But most districts, similar to ours, I would argue, primarily use a computer as a newer typewriter and a newer book. This is a lost opportunity for all California students, and I would say specifically for us. Especially with COVID, we have seen this large migration of tech workers move out of the Bay Area. Now they're living here. Well, those could be our kids, right? About 71% of tech workers that work in the Valley are actually foreign-born. We do not know enough of people for these kinds of jobs. This is a huge opportunity for us in a rural area where there are not that many job opportunities. So, we're talking about jobs where average salary is $100,000 a year. There's 800,000 of these jobs just in the Bay Area. And currently only 7% of computer scientists are either Latinx or Black. So I would argue that this is one of the frontiers that we have in this district, aside from these other ones that we've been working on. And lastly, there's COVID. Nationally, school districts with the highest concentrations of students living in poverty are the ones most likely to be in distance learning phase right now. Students in poverty are more likely to need the social, emotional, and academic support that school provides. The challenges from remote learning last spring are clear. There was uneven digital access. There was less dedicated quiet space at home for kids to work. Parents are outside the home, unable to give them support. There's subjects and grades because poor teachers, I mean, they had to learn so much so fast to be able to adopt this new strategy, and everyone wasn't equally ready. Sound familiar? Anyway, students in a distance learning are likely to have are more challenged to develop a trusting relationship with their teacher. So these are likely to pose long-term challenges that disproportionately affect the students that we're concerned about. COVID isn't going away. We're probably going to be in some sort of adaptive strategy, at least for the next year. You probably know a family like I do. On my blog, there's 3 girls that spent the day in their garage by themselves while their mom must go to work. One of them has already gotten warnings of failing over classes. You can't do this. So under normal circumstances, we might call the Child Protective Services on this lady who's trying her absolute hardest. So we need to address this differently. This is going to be a COVID year, but we need to do better than we are. I'm proud of the teachers and parents who are working so hard under these really challenging conditions to educate our young people. We need to work together to support our educational community. My heart goes out to everyone challenged by the myriad crises that are unfolding. We have the pandemic, the nation's political environment, the economy, rapid environment degradation from climate change. It's a whopping dose of stress-provoking experiences. And I'm so proud to say that up until very recently, I feel that as a community we're really pulling together around our students, and I'm feeling that's starting to fracture a little bit. Anyway, I am also proud that our district, led by Dr. Cutler, reached out to all stakeholders, including our local doctors and public health professionals, to develop a COVID plan, which aims to offer all the educational opportunities possible while keeping everyone safe as deemed by our medical community. We personally go to these doctors, our school district went to these doctors and asked for their advice. When is it safe? And they've told us. We're talking now. So I'm going to finish by offering just some specific ideas for taking action. I believe that our voices together are what really makes a difference. So I would say, number 1, advocate for high-speed internet for all. Broadband is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Almost 30% of our state's school children lack the necessary broadband to attend school remotely. Even worse, half of those 16% of students have no internet connection at all. 2, vote. You've probably heard this once or twice today. Increase funding for schools. On the ballot this fall is Prop 15. Let me tell you just a little bit about that. It increases funding for K-12 public schools, community colleges, and local governments by requiring that commercial and industrial real property be taxed on current market value instead of purchase price. So we're thinking of Disneyland and Apple that are paying property taxes on the original cost of that land. Meanwhile, we're 41st in the nation in school funding. So exempt from this are residential properties, agricultural land, and owners of commercial and industrial properties with a combined value of less than $3 million. Any additional educational funding will supplement existing school funding guarantees. Also, this exempts small businesses from personal property tax for other businesses and provides a $500,000 exemption. Thirdly, fight for climate change action. We can't build a just and equitable future for our kids on a planet that's been destabilized so much by human activity. Arguably, climate change is the most immediate threat for the marginalized people in this country and our world. Not only are the world's poor more likely to live in those places most affected by climate change, marginal land like flood areas, marginal land that doesn't produce crops to subsist upon, but it also means that those people are most at risk from climate change have the fewest resources to cope with the rapid changes that are unfolding. So use your voice on these 3 issues. Vote your conscience this fall. Better yet, run for office.